The modern battlefield is described in missiles, aircraft, and satellites. Beneath all of it sits something smaller, quieter, and harder to replace. This is troop talk. Let's begin. In a clean room lit by flat white fluorescence, the air never stops moving. It is filtered, recirculated, and counted. Engineers in hooded suits step slowly, as if speed itself could contaminate the work. A wafer, mirror smooth, the size of a dinner plate, slides into a machine that costs more than a fighter jet. Inside, light is shaped in patterns too small for the eye to see. Across the country, in a secure assembly bay, a missile seeker is open like a watch. A technician lifts a lid the size of a paperback. Underneath, the metal cavity is almost empty. A few ceramic packages. A web of gold wire. A chip no larger than a fingernail that will decide whether the seeker can distinguish a target from noise. The hum of manufacturing and the stillness of final assembly are separated by thousands of miles, dozens of suppliers, and years of lead time. Yet they are part of the same system. And increasingly, that system has become a strategic vulnerability. For decades, the United States built weapons around the assumption that electronics would always be available. Not necessarily the newest electronics, but enough of them. Reliable, consistent, and economically viable. That assumption no longer holds. Commercial chip cycles are measured in months. Military platforms are measured in decades. A fighter can fly for 40 years. The electronics inside it can become unobtainable in 5. What follows is an unglamorous crisis, obsolescence. Not the obsolescence of old ideas, but the disappearance of parts. A specific microcontroller. A radiation-hardened memory chip. A sensor interface built for a process node no one makes anymore, because the market has moved on. When those parts vanish, maintenance becomes archaeology. Engineers redesign boards and qualify replacements under standards that demand repeatability. In civilian life, a vanished part means a new model. In defense, it can mean a grounded fleet or a delayed missile. This is why, on January 5, 2026, an agency most Americans have never heard of issued a contract award that reached into the tens of billions. The Defense Microelectronics Activity, DMEA, announced a contract vehicle with a ceiling of roughly $25.30 billion for the Advanced Technology Support Program, designed to secure microelectronics support across a long ordering period. It is not a single purchase. It is a pipeline. To understand the scale, it helps to understand what microelectronics represent in modern force. Every precision strike depends on sensors and processing. Every secure radio depends on cryptographic hardware. Every missile defense interceptor is, at its core, signal processing at high speed. Yet defense buys microelectronics in small volumes, over long time horizons, often with requirements commercial firms avoid. It needs parts that survive radiation and extreme temperature cycles. It needs supply chains that can be audited. It needs designs that cannot be quietly altered between batches. And it needs those parts long after the commercial world has abandoned the manufacturing process that produced them. The first trade-off is speed versus assurance. In consumer technology, the reward goes to those who move fast. In defense microelectronics, speed can be a liability. A fast transition can break certification, disrupt interoperability, and introduce new failure modes. But staying still is also dangerous because the market does not wait. When a manufacturer ends a production line, there is no negotiation. There is only scramble. The second trade-off is performance versus survivability. The most advanced chips are usually the smallest, densest, and most power efficient. They can also be the least tolerant of radiation and the hardest to qualify for mission-critical environments. A processor that thrives in a data center may fail in orbit in ways that are difficult to predict. The third trade-off is cost versus control. Advanced manufacturing is concentrated in a small number of global firms and locations. That concentration makes economic sense. It is also, from a security perspective, a point of leverage and risk. DMEA exists to manage these trade-offs, where commercial logic breaks down. It does not compete with the largest chip makers. It sits at the intersection of government, industry, and defense contractors, focusing on what the commercial market does not provide: trusted access, long-term sustainment, and specialized manufacturing for low-volume, high-consequence needs. Its work spans two worlds. In one, it supports advanced development, new designs, new packaging, new ways to verify integrity. In the other, it performs a quieter function, keeping existing systems alive. That means procuring parts that are no longer produced, qualifying substitutes, and managing the chain of custody that ensures a chip is what it claims to be. Bureaucracy is sometimes what keeps complex systems functioning. When a radar module fails, the replacement cannot be close enough. It must match performance, reliability, and interface standards. The contract vehicle, announced in early January, is known as the Advanced Technology Support Program. Its structure matters. It is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity framework, a pre-built legal and industrial path that allows the government to issue task orders quickly across a range of microelectronics needs without renegotiating a full contract each time. Speed in this context is not about novelty. It is about response. The ability to repair, redesign, or insert a component when the supply chain shifts, when a vulnerability is discovered, or when a production line disappears. The United States is not alone in facing this dilemma, but it is responding in a way shaped by its procurement system and its global commitments. One approach is the commercial model. Concentrate production at the cutting edge, drive costs down through scale, and treat supply chains as global optimization problems. This model has produced extraordinary capability. It has also produced fragility. When a region is disrupted by weather, politics, or energy shortages, the ripple travels instantly through the economy. A missing component can stop an automobile line. In defense, it can stop an aircraft retrofit. A second approach is to treat microelectronics as strategic infrastructure. Accept higher costs, emphasize trusted access, and keep niche production alive when the market moves on. DMEA's assured access model fits that logic. Fragility is not abstract. Counterfeit components have entered defense supply chains for years, often sourced through gray markets when official parts are unavailable. Counterfeits range from crude remarking to sophisticated forgeries. Even when intent is not sabotage, the reliability risk is enormous. A component that fails early can cascade into system-wide failure, and in a weapon the margin is small. This is why trusted is a recurring word in defense microelectronics. Trust is a chain of documentation. It is process control. It is the ability to trace a component from fabrication to packaging, to shipment to installation. It is also the ability to certify that the design being produced is the design that was approved, with no undocumented changes. That discipline has costs. It slows production. It limits supplier options. It raises prices. But it produces a kind of resilience that commercial markets rarely pay for. In the background sits a wider shift. Defense procurement is moving towards sustained industrial readiness. On January 6, 2026, reporting on plans to expand Patriot interceptor production capacity signaled a broader pattern. Air defense and munitions treated less as inventory and more as continuous manufacturing problems. Electronics sit upstream of that shift. A missile is not just a motor and an airframe. It is guidance electronics, sensors, and computing. Increasing output requires not only more assembly lines, but more boards, more qualified chips, and more test capacity. When the supply chain is stressed, the bottleneck often appears in components that look trivial until they are missing. This is the systemic layer of the story. The $25.30 billion ceiling is not just a procurement headline. It is an industrial signal. It tells suppliers that the government expects long-term demand for specialized microelectronic services. It tells contractors that task orders may be used to sustain systems, redesign modules, and insert new parts. It tells the broader market that microelectronics is being treated as strategic infrastructure. It also reveals how defense is trying to buy flexibility. Traditional procurement is built around fixed requirements and long timelines. Microelectronics does not cooperate with that rhythm. Parts disappear. Vulnerabilities are discovered. Standards evolve. A platform may need an update not because the mission has changed, but because the market has. The contract vehicle is a way to manage uncertainty, not by predicting every future need, but by building the scaffolding to respond when needs emerge. On January 5, 2026, the award placed multiple firms into the program, enabling competition at the task order level and reducing dependence on any single supplier. The logic is familiar to anyone who studies resilience. Diversity of suppliers, redundancy of capability, and the ability to shift work when one node fails. But resilience is not only about redundancy. It is also about time. Microelectronics programs run on lead times measured in months or years, while readiness problems can emerge in days. The question becomes whether the microelectronics ecosystem can shorten the interval between problem and solution without compromising trust. Fabrication is only one step. Defense-grade packaging, testing, and qualification often determine how fast electronics can be delivered and whether they can be trusted. DMEA's program sits in that narrow space between speed and discipline. It is an attempt to institutionalize rapid response while preserving assurance. That is a hard balance to hold. Move too fast and trust erodes. Move too slow and readiness collapses. The story, then, is not simply about building more chips. It is about rebuilding an ecosystem that can sustain defense technology across decades. It is about ensuring that electronics inside a missile built in 2026 can still be supported in 2046, not through nostalgia, but through procurement architecture and industrial planning. Recent events have brought the issue into sharper relief. On December 16, 2025, NATO agreed its common-funded budgets for 2026, signaling sustained investment in collective defense. On January 5, 2026, DMEA launched the $25.30 billion ATSB vehicle. On January 6, 2026, reporting highlighted plans to expand Patriot interceptor production capacity. And on January 9, 2026, Croatia's Rafale fighters assumed NATO air policing duties, an operational reminder that modern readiness depends on electronics that must be sustained over time. Over the next 12 to 24 months, the impact of ATSB will be measured less by headlines and more by execution. How quickly task orders can be issued, whether suppliers can expand packaging and test capacity, whether trusted procurement can keep pace with obsolescence, whether sustainment crises can be resolved before they become readiness crises. Uncertainty remains. Ceiling values do not equal spending, and contract vehicles can exist without full utilization. Outcomes depend on task order flow, on program management, and on whether the broader defense ecosystem commits to using the vehicle as intended. There is also integration. Microelectronics support must connect to platform program offices, to prime contractors, to cybersecurity standards, and to export controls that shape what can be shared with allies. The United States is treating microelectronics as a strategic dependency that must be managed with the same seriousness as fuel, munitions, and logistics. Back in the clean room, the wafer leaves the machine and is inspected under magnification. Imperfections are measured, mapped, and recorded. In the assembly bay, the seeker is sealed again. A few screws, a torque wrench, a final inspection. In the coming years, The visible symbols of military power will continue to fly and sail and launch. Their endurance will depend, increasingly, on systems that fit in the palm of a hand. Systems that must be trusted, sustained, and available on demand. For now, the war-ready supply chain is not a convoy. It is a set of contracts, factories, and cleanrooms that never make the news until they fail.